For years, Lenny Kravitz allowed the world to believe a simple version of his past. A passionate romance, a marriage, and then a quiet separation. Nothing unusual, nothing complicated. It was the kind of story audiences are used to hearing, especially in the world of celebrity relationships. But behind that simplified narrative was something far more layered. What he chose not to explain publicly wasn't about hiding the truth. It was about protecting something that didn't fit into easy headlines. Only much later did he begin to open up, not to correct people, but to share a deeper understanding of what that relationship truly meant. 2. His connection with Lisa Bonet didn't begin in a dramatic or cinematic way. There were no grand gestures or immediate sparks that everyone could see. Instead, it started in a quiet, almost forgettable moment, one of those brief encounters that most people would overlook. Yet for him, that moment stayed. It lingered in a way that felt different, like something meaningful had been set in motion without either of them fully realizing it at the time. 3. At that stage in his life, Lenny wasn't yet the confident artist the world would later recognize. He was still discovering himself, unsure of his direction, and navigating the uncertainty that comes with chasing a creative path. Lisa, on the other hand, already had a presence in the entertainment world. Despite their different positions, there was something unspoken that connected them. It wasn't about status or timing. It was something quieter, more intuitive, almost like recognition. 4. Their early interactions weren't driven by romance. There was no rush to define what they were or where things were heading. Instead, their bond grew naturally, through shared space and time. Conversations, silence, and simply being around each other created a foundation that didn't rely on pressure or expectations. It was a connection that developed slowly, almost effortlessly, without needing labels. 5. One of the most significant aspects of their relationship was how it influenced Lenny's creative journey. Lisa didn't try to guide or shape his work directly. Instead, her presence created an environment where he felt free to explore his thoughts and emotions. That freedom became a catalyst. It allowed him to express parts of himself that had previously remained hidden, helping him grow not just as an artist, but as a person. 6. The shift from friendship to something deeper didn't happen through planning or intention. It emerged naturally, almost unexpectedly. In a simple, unremarkable moment, everything changed. What had been unspoken suddenly became clear. For Lenny, it didn't feel like the beginning of something new. It felt like stepping into something that had already been quietly forming beneath the surface. 7. As their relationship evolved, life began to move quickly. They made decisions based on instinct rather than strategy. Their marriage wasn't about spectacle or public image. It was personal, immediate, and rooted in how they felt at the time. For a while, it created a world that felt separate from everything else, a space defined by creativity, individuality, and shared experience. 8. The arrival of their daughter brought a new dimension to their lives. It added depth, responsibility, and a sense of purpose that neither of them had fully experienced before. For a time, their home became a place where art and family blended seamlessly. Music, creativity, and personal expression were not separate from daily life. They were part of it. 9. But as Lenny's career began to grow, the balance they had built started to shift. Success brought new demands, travel, schedules, and expectations that were difficult to manage alongside a young family. What once felt natural and grounded began to feel stretched. The pace of life changed, and with it, the rhythm of their relationship. 10. At the same time, both of them were evolving individually. Lisa's priorities began to center more around stability and privacy, while Lenny was navigating the pressures of rising fame. They weren't moving in opposite directions, but they were no longer moving at the same speed. That difference, subtle at first, gradually became more significant. Their separation didn't come with drama or public conflict. There were no headlines filled with scandal. Instead, it was a quiet realization that the life they had created together could no longer exist in the same way. It was not a lack of love that led to their separation, but a shift in circumstances and timing. For Lenny, the period after their separation was deeply challenging. The emotional impact didn't fade quickly, it stayed with him. It influenced his thoughts, his routine, and most importantly, his music. Instead of speaking openly at the time, he expressed what he felt through his art. Music became a space where he could process everything without needing to explain it. The songs he created during that time carried a sense of reflection and vulnerability. They weren't about anger or blame. They were about understanding, longing, and the complexity of moving forward while still holding on to something meaningful. What many listeners didn't realize was that these songs were deeply personal. They reflected an internal conflict, the reality that while the relationship had ended, the connection had not. That contradiction became a central theme in his work during that period. Over time, their relationship began to transform. Instead of allowing distance to create resentment, they chose a different path. Through effort and patience, they rebuilt their connection, not as partners, but as co-parents and individuals who still respected each other. Their approach to co-parenting was intentional. It required communication, understanding, and a willingness to prioritize their child above everything else. Slowly, what could have remained complicated became something more stable and supportive. As years passed, their bond continued to evolve. It moved beyond friendship into something that could best be described as family, just in a different form. This transformation wasn't immediate, but it showed that relationships don't always have to end completely. What stood out most was the absence of negativity. In a culture where breakups often lead to conflict, their story took a different direction. They demonstrated that it's possible to let go of one version of a relationship while still valuing what it once was. When Lenny eventually spoke about Lisa openly, it wasn't to revisit the past with regret. Instead, it was to acknowledge that some connections remain significant, even after they change. His perspective reflected maturity and a deeper understanding of what love can become over time. Their story challenges the idea that relationships must have clear endings. Sometimes, they simply transform. What once was romantic can evolve into respect, partnership, and lasting connection. And in a world that often seeks simple conclusions, that kind of truth feels both rare and meaningful.